Hello everybody, welcome back to the Harrison Oakley channel, and due to somewhat popular demand compared to my other videos, we are going for part 2 of Undertime Slopper Explained. Today we are looking at the story of Undertime Kingdom, and more importantly the battle for Undertime Castle, which has been basically the main story that has been basically dominating most of the lore recently. And obviously you've got the happenings that are, the animals and the different creatures that are within Albert's forest, and of course we've got the uncle and the nephew, which the more I look into this story, the more I believe it's some sort of prequel to the Albert's Forest Undertime Castle lore, and I'll go through this and I'll probably explain at the end what I mean by that. But without further ado, guys, we are going to get into this. And if you do enjoy this video, possibly share it in the Undertime Slopper Reddit. That's all I'm going to ask, because those are the real ones. But anyways, let's go. So, Undertime Slopper Part 2, Undertime Kingdom. Episode 1, Elf Vandalism on Undertime Kingdom. So this introductory video explains a lot about the power dynamics, relations, and enemies of the Undertime army. Whilst it's been vacant, it appears the elves, the enemies of Undertime Castle, have vandalised the castle with graffiti marks covering the outer regions of the castle walls. Reasons unknown, however, the voice explaining the events may be Albert or some other character present within Undertime Slopper. We know later that this isn't Albert or Simon or the Professor, that, these are characters that we'll get to know. This character remains unnamed, however, seems to be an important character, possibly the leader of the Undertime army, trying to defend the Undertime castle from these elves. As I said in the introductory paragraph, the reasons for the spite between the two groups remains unknown. However, I believe eventually we will learn the origins of the dispute and what happened between them, and why there is a war that eventually happens. Anyways, episode 2 almost didn't make it out of Albert's Forest. Now, this one is a very interesting episode, and even I am not fully sure on what it actually means. But it basically begins with an announcer who we have not met. It's a female voice, and it seems to be coming from somewhere quite far from Albert's Forest. Saying Albert's Forest is closing in 5 minutes. Says, as I say, an otherworldly announcer, possibly a character within the spacecraft or the other echelon of the Undertime Slopper lore. If you guys aren't aware, there's a few episodes which take place in a spacecraft where there's this female as with I think a few other characters, and says, "I really hope they're okay down there," possibly referring to the war that is occurring at the same time. Therefore, I believe there's some connection between space and what's actually happening within this forest. This would also explain why many of the characters seem to be not from our current reality and seem a bit futuristic or cartoonish, because they're actually from outer space. That's another theory that people, including myself, somewhat believe in, but again, none of this is necessarily confirmed. However, this episode continues asking for Undertime, seemingly calling out to a protagonist. Undertime. The announcer sounds very desperate at this point. This is during where a car is traveling across the plains of Albert's Forest to get to the end of a dam or a tunnel of some sort, where I personally recall it being the living space of the uncle and nephew, that also being located. I think this was during the prelude where this isn't actually canon. However, again, that means that it's not fully sure whether that is still correct. The reasons for escaping Albert's Forest also are fairly unknown, maybe due to the danger posed by the elves. The danger, of course, is further explained in the further episodes that we will go into. Episode 3, Picking Up a Package in Albert's Forest. Here we see a car making a return episode, last seen in the previous episode, escaping Albert's Forest. This time it seems to be picking up a package, as explained through the title. The person talking in this episode is now confirmed not to be Albert from the line, "I don't think Albert's happy with me, he won't do anything about these fucking owls." Insisted a sense of complacency from Albert. "These packages should hope I help, and maybe Simon knows." The package is delivered within the forest, seemingly to help the effort against the elves. What in the package remains unknown until later episodes. So far in terms of the characters, we have Albert, who is the all-powerful leader of Albert's Forest, Simon, who is possibly either the nephew or the uncle, and the voice explaining the events of episode 1 and episode 3. And also the announcer from the otherworldly spacecraft, which again doesn't have a name. And also the quote "maybe Simon knows" either is referring to the oncoming war against the elves or the graffiti on the castle. Either way, Albert and Simon seem to be important characters alongside the main character of these previous 2 episodes. Episode 4, Undertime Kingdom Elf Destroyer Unboxing. This episode begins with an unnamed character, seemingly a powerful figure on the team of Undertime Army, speaking on a positive note, saying the kingdom is saved. However, jumps along quickly to bad news that elf vandalism still hasn't came off, concluding that they have used permanent markers. "Here's my car," he says, highlighting he may live outside Albert's Forest. However, he has some connection to the Undertime, and a calling to help save the army against the elves. The biggest revelation of this episode, however, is a reveal of what is in the Amazon delivery package. It is none other than the Undertime Warrior. He is geared up in chainmail and has motivation to kill every fucking elf I see in the fucking woods. He runs off the distance. We can come away from this episode with a sense of hope that Undertime Castle is somewhat saved from the elves. Episode 5. Can anyone translate this vandalism? Our main character in this side of the story speaks to us again seemingly shortly after unboxing the Undertime Warrior. He is atop the highest point of the Undertime Castle and is staring at one of the support beams holding the roof. What is interesting is that it seems that there is inscribed letters on a particular beam, and that the character says it must be the elf language. He struggles to decipher it, and then he says he must call Simon to translate the letterings. My best attempt at translating it comes away with "try your best, rest well," possibly an egotistical remark from the elves to say that they're stronger than the Undertime army, and they must rest well to even have a chance. Simon, once again, could be the uncle or nephew characters we have heavily delved into on my previous video on my channel. Episode 6, The Battle for Undertime Castle Part 1. This begins the most important stages of events within this part of the lore, Undertime Kingdom. It once again starts positively, the character saying it's a splendid day in Undertime Kingdom with a cheeky shadow, referring to the phallic-shaped tower, a part of Undertime Castle. The mood continues to be light-hearted for a short while, with the character showing viewers a toy version of his car. However, the mood is cut short with the incessant screams of the elves. The person talking here begins to become a little bit worried, and rhetorically asks, "Where is the Undertime Warrior?" The camera cuts to the Undertime Warrior being trapped in an elf jail, therefore confirming between episode 4 and episode 6, the warrior must have been outnumbered by the elves within Albert's Forest. Episode 7, The Battle for Undertime Castle Part 2. This introduces with the person in most of these announcing that the Undertime Slopper is under attack. This then is immediately preceding the previous episode where the elves first enter the kingdom and reveal that the Undertime Warrior has been imprisoned. Undertime Army, he booms, signaling the army to defend the castle from the elves. Here we see members recruited by either Albert or Nigel to help defend the castle. In terms of attacking tactics, they seem to be in a circumference formation and using guerrilla tactics with little to no weaponry involved. In terms of the elf layout, they're attacking from all angles and definitely outnumbering with a group of 6 outnumbering the Undertime Army. I jumped a little bit ahead there. There's a few different types of elves we have, a rows of small ones. We have a group of 6 with slightly different coloured hats, possibly a platoon, and then a big orange hat ones, seemingly leaders of the platoon. Notice the medieval elements, possibly signaling war technology at this point, hasn't progressed since the early 1700s. Episode 8, The Battle for Undertime Castle Part 3. The battle continues, bloodshed and terror, you name it. It begins with the soldiers of the Undertime army battling rows of small elves, 2 or 3 platoon of red-capped elves, and 1 orange-capped elf. This, from an outsider's perspective, seems like they're getting outnumbered. However, the calm nature of these soldiers insinuates it's an easy fight, and that they have received extensive training to defend Undertime Castle. Our second soldier seems to be fully kitted with a sword, showing them as war progresses, their advancements in weapon technology increases, maybe the key to their victory. Then, a descendant from Alexander the Great among many with better weaponry are fighting the elves, including someone using Kamehameha. Also, the white-capped elves made their first appearance, possibly reserves or a less experienced fighting elf. The camera flashes upwards to the castle, where the leader, the main character, decides he's going to call Simon. But just before he does, an elf drives into the prison, holding the Undertime warrior captive. Episode 9, The Battle for Undertime Castle Part 4. The elves are holding the Undertime warrior captive. Are they taunting us? The leader sounds extremely annoyed and scared, seeing his most senior soldier captive. This seems like desperate times for the Undertime army. More and more, the white-capped owls are making an appearance, however, showing an essence of increased weakness in their army in terms of experience. Alongside this, the weaponry is becoming more and more deadly, with one of their soldiers using a rocket launcher. Alongside the battling, a new character is introduced, the Professor. The Professor seems to be in some sort of coalition with the leader of the current Undertime army, and in his professional opinion, he states that we need Simon. However, his cellular device isn't currently working, and he can't decipher the text on that support beam. He asks instead to call out to Simon. Simon! Episode 10, The Battle for Undertime Castle Part 5. In the midst of the battle, the cries of the soldiers of the Undertime army can be heard shouting Simon. This describes most of the episode, apart from a very exciting cliffhanger which there seems to be from outer space being dropped onto land. There's something coming from outer space, guys, so it could be Simon, a weapon, or even something else. Currently, we don't know. However, it's a very important continuation of the story, and I believe that there'll probably only be one more part of the battle, pretty much, after. There'll be a part 6 where whatever's coming down is going to probably save Undertime Army. However, it's a very good part of the story, and in terms of, I guess, my conclusions and possible, like, what the future of this part of the story will probably look like, it'll probably end on part 6. It'll be saved, but I think a new threat may be coming along. So, of course, the elves have tried and failed. However, I believe, again, maybe something to do with Mr. Poopman. I think there's something terribly devious about that guy. But anyways, guys, that is that part of lore explained. If you did enjoy this explanation, like I said before, man, please send it to the Reddit. I want to, at some point, talk to the creator of Undertime Slopper and our boys' merch, their merch. So, appreciate it. But yeah, anyways, guys, see you in a bit.